Let me get straight to the point. It's not the superhero genre that's dying. What we're witnessing is the franchise death in Hollywood. I'd like to tell you a story. A story where one too many greedy people hopped on the same boat to try and get to the promised land before everyone else, which then led to the boat sinking under the weight of the same greedy people. It's a demise that seemed pretty much impossible just 5 short years ago. In fact, it seemed like this expansion would bring about Hollywood's money printing era, which made literally everyone in Tinsel town desperate to try and catch the high tide, which has led to an untimely but well-deserved end of an era. It's almost ironic that the franchise that really kicked this trend into the next gear and made the most profit out of it is the one that seems to be falling hand in hand with the trend itself, the MCU. The entire idea of a franchise growing and branching out into every part of the entertainment industry was almost unheard of. The only IP that had achieved something even remotely close to that previously was the Harry Potter franchise. I remember back in the day when the wizard world was at its absolute peak and it looked like there were wand replicas and kids reciting magical spells everywhere. The series had become so wildly popular that they were into almost everything, from massive theme parks to small merchandise like water bottles and stickers, and pretty much everything in between. It was like Harry Potter had reached omnipresence. And it was not even limited to the Western world because the Asian, South American, and European markets were all booming just as much. And the franchise made a jaw-dropping $20 billion plus between 2000 and 2010, the decade where it was at the peak of its popularity. But they never ventured into TV though, because the material at hand, despite being pretty vast, was still limited, and the creators and studios understood one simple concept, that more is not better. Better is better. I'll explain as we go along. So around the time the franchise was closing out, and with a bang might I add, the MCU was starting to slowly but surely rise. Phase 1 of the Infinity Saga was starting to be well received by the audiences, and comparatively lesser known comic book heroes were beginning to take center stage and break box office records. Because up until that point, it was mostly Batman and Spider-Man who ruled the superhero scene, along with a hit here and there by the X-Men series. But once Avengers came out, it was all the buzz. Out of nowhere, a B-tier character was suddenly the quote-unquote anchor being and had elevated an entire franchise to unseen heights. Because on the shoulders of Robert Downey Jr., Marvel built what turned out to be, at the time of course, the highest grossing superhero movie of all time, Avengers. A $1 billion plus gross for a superhero film, and without the name Batman attached to it, was unprecedented at the time. And suddenly a new behemoth was born. And they slowly but steadily started branching out everywhere. They released Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., a TV show based on Phil Coulson and his allies, which opened to mind-blowing numbers. Numbers that even established shows would kill for. The buzz was in fact so crazy that anything with the name MCU associated to it was making money. And around the time when MCU was breaking all records, which is 2015, another beast had been reawakened after a decade-long slumber. One of the top 10 IPs in the world at the time. An IP that had outgrossed even the mighty MCU, and despite not seeing a feature film release for a decade, which was Star Wars. I remember when The Force Awakens hit the screens, like it was yesterday, and the American markets especially were on fire. The kind of buzz you see only once every decade if you're lucky. I've never been a big Star Wars fan, which is why I never really made any videos about them. I only like to speak about the stuff I'm genuinely interested in or care about. But the mania, that I'll never forget. The cinemas were booked out for weeks in advance. The merch was consistently sold out to the point where stocks would disappear faster than they could manufacture them. In fact, on September 4th, 2015, about 3 months before the movie came out, Disney organized something called Force Friday, an event to unveil new Star Wars merch, and on that weekend, they sold roughly $500 million worth of goods. 500 mil, 3 days, unprecedented. They even became the largest merchandise brand in the world. Money was coming in from every direction. It was like they didn't know what to do with it. So they decided to expand the brand just as the MCU did, with the first live-action TV series, The Mandalorian, which came out in 2019. But then, the floodgates opened and everything started crumbling. And I might receive some serious backlash for this, but I blame these two franchises for causing the downfall and saturation period that Hollywood is currently experiencing, causing even the mightiest to crumble and fall. It all started with the aptly named Avengers Endgame because it was exactly that, an endgame for Hollywood. People don't seem to realize what a canon event the release of this film really was. It was the climax of all climaxes. I've made a separate video on the MCU's inevitable fall, where I dive deep into the implications and the absolute state of the franchise already, so I won't be going into the topic again here, because this video is about the collective machine known as Hollywood, not about any one particular unit. But after Endgame, it's like every damn studio executive lost their sanity, because suddenly everyone wanted to exercise the same formula of creating a shared universe and giving every character a spin-off. I'm not just talking about the main cast. It's like every B, C or even D tier character which was received even remotely well by the fans was discussed to potentially get a series of their own. Rooster in Top Gun Maverick was pretty cool. Don't you worry boys, he'll get his own movie. Hey, Moneypenny in Skyfall was good. Don't you worry boys, she'll get her own show. Remember Boba Fett from The Empire Strikes Back? Don't you worry boys, he'll get his own show. You know, Ela from The Witcher? Don't you worry boys, she'll get her own show. Okay. You know, Velma was easily my least favorite in Scooby-Doo. Don't you worry boys, she'll get her own show. Obi-Wan Kenobi was don't you worry boys, he'll get his own show. Gotham Knights was a horrible game. Don't you worry boys, they'll get their own show. Nick Fury, don't you worry boys, he'll get his own show. A Continental Tire, don't you worry boys, he'll get its own show. I was talking about the tires actually. Hey John, is it snowing outside? Don't you worry boys, Jon Snow will get his own show. You name it, they made it. The situation has gone so out of control that they're now discussing spin-offs for the SWAT series, an It prequel, a Stranger Things spin-off, another Doctor Who spin-off, god damn it. Marvel itself has released 22 shows under the MCU banner with 51 collective seasons and a nauseating 500 plus total episodes. For those who like math, that comes up to about 400 hours of watch time. At this point, they really gotta ask themselves how much is too much. Oh, speaking of too much, Star Wars isn't really that far behind, with about 7 live action TV shows in the last 6 years, and more than half of them were horse shit. Actually, everything except Andor was horse shit to be precise. And it's not even just spin-offs. You won't hear me say that word for a month now. So as I was saying, the monstrous greed of these studios is devouring IP after IP, with never-ending remakes that just seem to be getting worse and dumber with every subsequent project, while the viewership drops faster than the panties of an OnlyFans girl on a millionaire's yacht. Lord of the Rings destroyed via Rings of Power. Scooby-Doo ruined beyond belief. Snow White, do I really need to say anything? Lion King, shit upon. Jurassic Park recently rebooted into a mind-numbing piece of cinematic shit. And the list just goes on and on and on. And this isn't the end of it, because the LGBT virus has infected all of the aforementioned IPs. Literally all of them. Because as I have said in many of my videos before, these shows and movies are being altered by and for people who aren't even buying the tickets or watching these shallow TV shows, and they have now been reduced to a shell of their former selves because of identity politics and aimless activism. And the worst part, these are not even the actual issues, because the real problem is that the aforementioned TV shows and movies are just not true to source material, which makes them uninteresting to fans. Same old boring girl bosses taking on evil white guys, while someone from the multi-lettered crowd plays the good girl's right hand, who later identifies as the left hand, which then all culminates into a saga of self-victimization, while the crux of the franchise is left behind miles ago, so that they can establish their own version of a new utopia where reality is flipped, which then makes everything seem so utterly baseless that even the most hardcore fans just choose to tune out for good. And what 5 years of this same shit has done is that people are just not interested in franchises or shared movie universes anymore. And why would they be? We put hours of our day and years of our lives and hard-earned money from our pockets into a form of visual art. We bind our hearts and minds to the lore, the thrill, and the anticipation goes on for years. And then suddenly, someday, a girl with a nasal septum piercing in glasses, who identifies as a non-gender binary fluid thingy, shows up to work and decides to take a rainbow-colored on years of storytelling and tries to shape the whole IP around her idea of the world, instead of trying to understand and improvise upon the mythos that's already been loved for decades. And we as audiences are just supposed to accept it and blindly put our money into their pockets? That's not happening. Because as it turns out, franchise films or TV shows just aren't working like they used to anymore. Indiana Jones' Dial of Destiny failed. Mission Impossible 7 and 8 failed. Fast X failed. Furiosa failed. Jokerfolia Do failed. All the recent MCU movies except Deadpool and Wolverine, failures. And these are just films because the viewership of most aforementioned TV projects are down the drain. Because the whole idea of more is better is making these studios push out as many different projects as they can like clockwork to try and milk the respective franchise for every last droplet, which is then making the quality go down real fast due to negligence, time constraints, and piss poor writers, and it's also overexposing these IPs, which is making people just lose interest. As I said before, more isn't better. Better is better. Think of it as eating your favorite dish every single damn day. It just gets boring and then kicks in the saturation, which is exactly what seems to have happened. Even though there's an anomaly here and there like Loki and Andor, it's still a factual reality that the days of shared movie universes and franchises as a whole is coming to an end. Proof is in the stats, because the highest grossing Hollywood film of the year is the Minecraft movie, an original standalone film, for now at least, because I'm pretty sure it'll get a sequel sooner rather than later. And even though some IPs have managed to overcome the curve with the power of spectacle or nostalgia, the graph seems to be on a steady decline, which then appears to be leading us to the franchise death in Hollywood. So they should just stop. Stop trying to go to the well once too often and just let good movies and series be standalone and have the spotlight on them, instead of trying to expand and cash upon every single IP. Not everything can or needs to be the Infinity Saga of the MCU. Some things are beautiful when just left alone. That's it for today, folks. I'm gonna go have some mango yogurt.